The galaxy is wide and full of dark things. Most of them hide in places where light does not reach. In Warhammer 40K, people do not look up at the stars and dream. They fear them. Out there in the cold dark live horrors that would twist the mind and shatter the soul. This is a world where hope fades and silence can be more dangerous than noise. But within this world, there are still those who stand between the dark and the light. Some are loud, known for their fire and fury. Others move in shadows, unknown even to those they protect. Among them are the Exorcists. Their name carries weight, but their story is whispered, not spoken. Tonight, we are going to drift into that forgotten place. A calm journey across stories buried deep within locked vaults and sealed libraries. No battles will scream, no engines will roar. Instead, we will move slowly, like a soft wind passing through an old cathedral. This is sleep lore, a place to rest while we learn. So take a breath, let go of the day, and together we will begin. In the great halls of the Imperium, where everything is loud and shining and tall, some things are still kept quiet, not because they are unimportant, but because they are too important. These stories live behind sealed doors, hidden from most, protected, feared. The Exorcists are one of these secrets. They are a chapter of Space Marines, created not to lead parades or raise banners. They were made for one thing: to face the worst thing a human mind can face. Possession. The kind that comes from the warp. That place beyond space where thoughts become monsters and feelings take shape as nightmares. But before we can understand the Exorcists, we need to understand how they fit into this galaxy. We need to explore what kind of world would make warriors like them, why someone would create soldiers meant to be filled with demons, only to fight back from the inside. This is not just a story of battles. It is a story of survival, of becoming more than human, of walking through the fire and coming back whole. It is quiet. It is strange. It is real, in the way only the darkest truths can be. Now, let us begin. There are chapters of Space Marines known across the galaxy. Their colors shine bright on 1,000 banners. Their names are carved into statues and told in songs. But not all of them are meant to be seen. Some were born to be hidden. The Exorcists are one of those. Their story does not begin with a loud moment or a great war. It begins in a gap, a space between known things. Their creation happened during something called the 13th Founding, also known as the Dark Founding. Even the name tells you something is different here. The records from this time are missing. On purpose. The Lords of Terror have made sure of that. Most foundings have clear goals. Create new chapters to fight in far wars, push back Xenos, bring more order to the stars. But the 13th Founding feels like a question left unanswered. The chapters made during it were strange. Some disappeared, some were erased. Others, like the Exorcists, were hidden in plain sight, known by a name, but not by a truth. The Exorcists were not placed on shining fortress worlds. They were given quiet planets, isolated, out of the way. Their chapter homeworld is Banish, a name that fits, a place far from light, surrounded by storms, a place where the stars feel dimmer, where people speak in soft tones. It is fitting that a chapter like the Exorcists would come from there. But even the name Banish is not the true beginning. The true beginning lies in a secret, one held by the Ordo Malleus. That is one branch of the Inquisition, Their work is not with traitors or heretics or xenos. They focus on demons, the warp, the hidden enemies that can't be touched with a sword or seen with the eyes, only felt, only feared. There are whispers that the Grey Knights had a hand in the Exorcists' creation. The Grey Knights are a chapter beyond others, made by the Emperor himself, pure, resistant to the warp. They do not fall. They cannot be possessed. If they are the blade, then the Exorcists are the shield that bends but does not break. Instead of resisting the warp by keeping it out, the Exorcists were made to let it in, to survive it, to walk through the fire, not around it. The Exorcists do not fight the warp with closed doors. They open those doors and stand inside. It is said that the Exorcists do not know who their Primarch is. In a galaxy full of gene lines and pride, this makes them different. But they do not ask. Perhaps they know. Perhaps they are told not to. Perhaps it is better not to know. Their armor is red and bone, not gold, not shining, but bold in a quiet way. Red for the blood they have endured, bone for the truth of death always near. These colors are not for others to see. They are reminders, worn by warriors who fight things no one else dares face. Even other chapters do not know much about them, and that is by design. The Exorcists work with the Inquisition, but even that relationship is cold and careful. Too much truth can be dangerous. Some stories can open cracks in the mind. The Exorcists are trusted to do what must be done, but they are not trusted to speak about it. There is something calm in the way they move, measured, careful. Every step seems chosen, every silence a message. They do not boast, they do not celebrate, they do not leave behind tales, only results. Demons gone, planets saved, fear pushed back a little longer. Some say they are emotionless, that their training burns feeling away. But that is not true. They feel deeply. That is how they survive. They feel pain, doubt, terror. They walk into the darkest places and do not look away. But they carry those feelings without being controlled by them. That is their strength. In this first chapter, we see the shape of the Exorcists, not through bright lights, but through shadows. They are warriors made from silence, their past hidden, their future shaped by things others refuse to face. They are not here to be loved. They are here to stand, and keep standing, no matter what comes from the warp. Now that we know what they are, we must understand what they do, and how they were made to do it. In the next chapter we will walk with them through their hardest test, a trial no other chapter must face, a choice no human would ever make on their own, to let the warp in, but not be broken by it. To understand the Exorcists, you must begin with their first test. It is not a trial of strength or speed. It is not about how many enemies they can fight or how well they aim. Instead, it begins with something invisible, something most people cannot see or hear, but everyone fears. The warp. For most Space Marine chapters, the process of becoming a warrior follows a clear path. Young boys are chosen from harsh worlds. They are tested. They train. They receive implants. They grow strong. For the Exorcists, that path is different. It leads not just into the body, but into the soul, into the part of a person that cannot be touched, only tested. Their initiation begins with something few would survive: possession. This is not just a word. It is a real thing in the world of Warhammer. The warp is a space outside space. It is where thoughts live, where emotions grow wild. When something from the warp enters a person, it does not knock, it does not ask, it takes over. The body becomes a puppet, the voice becomes strange, the eyes go wrong, and inside the person watches as their body is used for things they would never do. For the Exorcists, this experience is not an accident, it is the point. Under the watch of the Ordo Malleus, these recruits are locked away in places no one talks about. They are brought to still rooms filled with wards and sigils. Runes glow softly, the air feels heavy. The silence is not empty, it listens. Here the chosen stand alone, and a door is opened. Not a door you can see, a door between the real and the unreal. From that space, something reaches out. Each recruit must face a demon, not in battle, not with armor or blade, but face to face, inside their own mind. The warp entity enters. It presses down, it speaks without words, it shows them visions, terrible ones, tries to twist their thoughts to turn their fears into weapons, and they must endure. There is no help, no guidance, only training from before. Training that taught them how to calm the mind, how to keep hold of who they are, even when the self begins to crack. Some fail. That truth cannot be avoided. Some are lost, burned from within. Others are too weak and become broken shells. Some die before the creature even takes root. But those who survive, truly survive, are changed. Not just stronger, wiser. They know what lives in the dark. They have felt it inside, and they have said no. This is not the end of their path. It is the beginning. The rest of the training now makes sense. The reason they were taught such quiet discipline, the way they were taught to read thoughts without reacting, to speak in silence, to hold pain without crying out. It is not just about surviving the warp. It is about learning its voice, understanding how it tries to trick, how it presses down and creeps in. This is what makes the Exorcists different. They do not just fight demons. They know how they think. It is not a gift. It is a wound they carry. The Ordo Malleus keeps this method locked away. No other chapter is allowed to copy it. It is too dangerous. Even the Inquisition treats this practice like a weapon with no safety, used only when needed. Too many times, things have gone wrong. Too many experiments ended in fire. But the Exorcists, they are not an experiment anymore. They are proof that something like this can work. Inside the chapter, those who pass the trial are not treated like heroes. There is no celebration, only silence. A mark is given, a simple symbol, a reminder that they lived through what should have killed them. They do not speak of what they saw, not because they are told not to, but because they know no words could explain it. Even among their brothers, those who survive the trial share a bond deeper than blood. They have seen what cannot be unseen, and they carry it with them. Every mission, every battle. The warp is always there, like a shadow behind the eye, but they are no longer afraid of it. Their psychic strength is not flashy. They do not shoot lightning from their hands. Their power is the power of control, of focus. When a demon roars, they do not flinch. When warp storms rise, they move forward. They do not rely on others to shield their minds. They are the shield. This ability makes them valuable, not just to the Inquisition, but to the Imperium itself. They can be sent to places others cannot go, planets lost to madness, ships haunted by things unseen. They do not cleanse with fire alone. They cleanse with will, with presence, with the simple act of not breaking. It is easy to call them cold, to say they have no emotion, but that is not true. They feel deeply. That is how they survived. What they lack is reaction. They do not show their fear. They do not let it control them. The Exorcists teach that fear is not weakness. Only what you do with it matters. In this chapter we have seen the heart of who they are, not in battle, but in the silence before it, in the space where most would fall apart. They do not become possessed to learn how to fight. They become possessed to learn how not to fall. And in that space, they find something no one expects. Not power, but peace. The kind of peace that only comes after facing the worst thing possible and walking away whole. As we move into the next chapter, we will see how this strength is used, not just in training or in secret rooms, but in real wars, in real missions. How the Exorcists are deployed not as warriors of glory, but as blades in the dark, clean, precise, and always watching. Most Space Marine chapters are raised to bring strength where the Imperium is weak. They strike with bolters and blades, breaking the enemy before the enemy breaks the world. But the Exorcists do not fight in the same way. They are not built for open wars or grand victories. Their battles are shorter, quieter, often unseen by the people they protect. They are called in when things have gone too far, when a planet has fallen into whispers and dread, when the warp begins to bleed into real space. That is when the Ordo Malleus sends a message, and the Exorcists come. The Ordo Malleus is one of the most secret branches of the Inquisition. Its work is not well known, even to many inside the Imperium. It exists to fight one enemy, the demonic, not just to destroy, but to understand, to track signs of corruption, to study patterns that point to warp activity, to act before others even know something is wrong. In the eyes of the Ordo Malleus, the Exorcists are not just warriors, they are tools, not simple ones like swords or guns, but crafted instruments made for a specific task. They can be trusted to do what others cannot. They do not need oversight. They understand the risks. They have faced them already and lived. The relationship between the Exorcists and the Ordo Malleus is not based on orders. It is built on quiet trust. Missions are assigned, not explained. Targets are marked, not discussed. In many cases, the Exorcists arrive without fanfare. They do not land with banners waving or drums beating. Their ships slip into orbit. Their squads drop like shadows. They do their work and leave. Most times, no one ever knows they were there. The kinds of missions they receive are not like standard battles. The Exorcists are not deployed to fight armies or defend walls. They are sent to places that do not make sense, to cities where everyone hears voices at night, to ships where the crew begins to forget their own names, to temples that should be empty but still echo with chanting. In these places, something is wrong, something that fire alone cannot fix. When the Exorcists arrive, they do not act quickly. They wait. They listen. They watch. Because the real enemy is often hidden, even from sight. They search for signs. Walls that bleed where they should not. Machines that hum with the wrong rhythm. Words written by hands that no longer belong to the ones who wrote them. It is not about killing fast. It is about knowing when to strike and where. And when they strike, it is not messy. It is not loud. It is surgical. Each brother knows his role. Each movement is part of a plan. Rooms are cleared. Symbols are broken. Warp breaches are sealed. Possessed hosts are removed with care. Sometimes full cities are left standing. Other times, everything is burned. Not out of anger, but out of need. There was once a mission called the Malorum War, a long campaign across distant systems where the warp had seeped in like water through broken stone. Many chapters fought there, but when it came time to cleanse the last worlds, the Exorcists were sent alone. Not because they were stronger, but because they would not be broken by what waited. The reports from that war were sealed, but it is known that the Exorcists never lost a brother to possession in that campaign. Not once. In another case, during the Guanthrax cleansing, a hive city had become infected by something unseen. People vanished. Machinery ran without power. Dreams became violent. The local guard could not even enter without falling to madness. The Exorcists arrived and made no announcement. Within a week, the upper levels were sealed. The lower hives burned, and the warp activity dropped to nothing. When asked what happened, the Ordo Malleus gave no answer. The Exorcists were already gone. Their tactics come from experience no other chapter shares. Their training lets them read signs others would miss. Their minds are trained not only to fight, but to observe without being moved. They can enter a room filled with warp energy and stay clear. They do not chant. They do not call for the Emperor to drive the evil away. They face it themselves, from within. Their squads often include brothers who have seen more demons than they have seen men, and yet they speak little of these things, not because they are afraid, but because speaking gives those things shape. The Exorcists believe some knowledge should stay quiet, not hidden in fear, but placed carefully where it cannot hurt the wrong mind. They are not fully part of the Inquisition. They are still Space Marines. They hold their own ranks and chapter rituals, but they serve willingly when called. They do not question missions. They do not refuse. There is no need. They know why they were made. Some say they are the scalpel where others are the hammer. That may be true. The Exorcists are not many in number. They do not expand quickly. Their recruits must pass trials no other chapter would dare ask. Their work leaves scars that last longer than wounds. But what they do cannot be done by others. As their numbers move through the galaxy, their ships rarely stop at major ports. They dock at black stations, forgotten moons, silent fortresses. They carry no trophies. They do not keep the names of the things they kill. They cleanse, and then they move on. In their silence, they hold power. Not the power of command, not the power of fear, but the power of calm. In a galaxy ruled by panic and shouting, the Exorcists move like still water. They remind us that not all strength is loud, not all victory is bright. Some battles are won in silence, with the mind still and the heart steady. In the next chapter, we will explore their place within the larger Imperium, how their armor reflects their journey, how their isolation shapes their hearts, and what it means to carry a burden that must never be shared. The Exorcists do not shine like other chapters. They do not seek honor in the way most warriors do. Their stories are not carved into stone walls or written across banners. They are not cheered when they return. Most times, they do not return at all, and when they do, it is in silence, because silence is what shaped them. It is what holds them together. Their armor is not made to impress. It does not gleam with gold or shine with gems. It is painted in red and bone. Red is not just the color of blood. It is the mark of suffering. a sign of what has been endured, not just by the body, but by the mind. Bone stands for the truth beneath all things, that life is thin and death waits beneath the surface. Together, these colors speak a quiet message, that they are alive not because of luck or strength, but because they have learned to stand where others fall. Each exorcist wears these colors as a kind of promise, not to others, but to themselves, that they will not be moved by fear, that they will not let the dark take root. Their armor is not a shell to hide inside. It is a reminder of what they carry, of what they have faced. They do not mix easily with other chapters. Even among fellow Space Marines, they are treated with care, not out of hate, but out of unease. Most Space Marines fight what they can see. They face alien beasts, traitor legions, machines gone wrong. The Exorcists fight something else, the kind of enemy that leaves no marks on walls, but twists the world from the inside, the kind that makes people forget who they are, or worse, remember things that never happened. Because of this, the Exorcists are often kept separate. Their ships are not part of great crusades. Their names are not written in long lists of heroes. Their homeworld remains a quiet place, far from busy stars. It is not cold, but it is still. The people there live simple lives. They do not cheer when the warriors walk by. They bow their heads. They give thanks with soft words, because they know what these warriors do. They know what they carry. The chapter itself does not speak of its past. Most do not know their gene father. It is possible they do not care to know. Some believe they come from the same line as the Grey Knights, that they share blood with those warriors of Titan. Others think their line is even older, tied to forgotten projects lost during the early days of the Imperium. Whatever the truth is, it remains locked. The Exorcists have never demanded to know more. They were made for a reason, and that is enough for them. What sets them apart is not just how they fight, but why they fight. The Exorcists do not burn with anger. They are not driven by rage or pride. They fight because someone must, because there are places in the galaxy where others cannot go. Places where the air itself feels wrong, where the stars whisper in strange voices, where the ground shifts when no one moves. In these places, demons walk without being seen, not with claws and horns, but with smiles and soft words. They make deals. They twist truth. They change people slowly, so that no one notices until it is too late. The Exorcists are the only ones who can walk into these places and not be changed, because they have already been tested, already stood in the storm. That is why they burn, not with fire, but with will. A quiet, steady flame. It does not roar, it does not dance. It stays, it waits, it endures. It is not a light for others to follow. It is a heat that keeps the cold away, just enough to keep hope alive. Inside the chapter, brothers share a strong bond, not built on jokes or stories, but on trust. Each of them has stood on the edge. Each of them has looked into the warp and come back. They do not need to speak to know what the others feel. They carry the same weight, and that makes them closer than most. But even they feel the burden of their path. The things they see do not fade with time. The demons they face leave marks that do not heal. Some exorcists speak less with each year. Some find peace in silence. Others lose themselves in prayer, not loud, but whispered. A few are taken away when the weight grows too heavy. The Inquisition calls it containment. The chapter calls it rest. No one says more. There is no shame in it. They do not look down on those who fall, because each of them knows they may one day follow, and so they walk carefully. They fight carefully. Every mission could be the last, not because of death, but because of what they face inside. Even so, they do not stop. They do not pull back. They take each mission as it comes, each demonic threat as a chance to protect the Imperium, not with noise, but with stillness. Their strength is not in what they show, it is in what they hold back. Some say they are not heroes, that they are tools, but that is not true. They are heroes of a kind most do not understand. Their victories are not bright. Their enemies do not leave behind ruined cities or burning ships. Often their success is that nothing happens, that a planet stays quiet, that a population never knows how close they came to ruin. That is the mark of the Exorcists, that they do what must be done, and then they leave. No reward, no celebration, only the flame still burning inside. Now that we have walked through their story, it is time to look beyond them, to the thing they were built to fight. Not just the warp, but the idea of possession itself. In the next chapter, we will begin a new part of this journey. We will step into the deeper history of the Imperium, where experiments were done in secret, where the warp was not only feared, but studied. We will learn how the Imperium came to understand demonic possession and what it risked in order to control it. The warp is not just a power. It is not simply another part of the galaxy. It is something older, stranger, and far more dangerous. It touches every part of life, yet few understand what it truly is. It is where psychers draw their strength, but it is also where nightmares are born. To touch the warp is to risk everything, and still, the Imperium has never stopped trying to learn more about it. The need for knowledge runs deep in the Imperium. In a galaxy filled with threats, not knowing can be as deadly as any weapon. For most people, the warp is only a name. It is how ships travel. It is where psychers get their strange powers. It is the source of fear. But for those behind the locked doors of the Inquisition, the warp is something to be tested, shaped, and controlled. That belief comes with a price. Long before the Exorcists were formed, the Imperium had already begun its quiet war against possession. The first signs came from the Emperor himself. Back in the days before the Imperium stretched across the stars, he had already begun to shape humanity's path. He saw that the warp was growing stronger. He knew it would one day reach into every part of life. He worked to build walls against it. His goal was not to destroy it, but to keep people safe from it. He made psychers, but also made blanks. These were humans who had no presence in the warp at all. They made demons uncomfortable. Some said they made reality stronger just by being near. These blanks, also called untouchables, were placed in secret labs and studied. The Emperor did not see them as weapons. He saw them as keys. Over time, others took these ideas further. The Ordo Malleus was created to deal with the rising threat of the warp. Not just demons, but all the things that came with them. Hauntings, warp storms, madness. They began to look for ways to fight these forces. Some of their methods were simple: fire, blades, seals carved into stone. Others were not so simple. In labs buried beneath the surface of forbidden moons, they started to do more. They captured demons and kept them locked in containment fields. They placed psychers in dark rooms and exposed them to warp energy. They opened small portals to see how far reality could bend before it snapped. These were not careless actions. Each one was studied, measured, controlled. But even control can be a lie. Many of these tests were never meant to be seen by others. The Inquisition does not share its work freely. But through pieces of lost records and old stories passed between those who remember, a pattern begins to appear. The Imperium was not just fighting the warp. It was learning from it, trying to shape it, trying to find out if possession could be used. It sounds strange, even wrong, but that is the path knowledge can take. When a threat becomes too strong to destroy, you start asking different questions. Not how to stop it, but how to live with it. That was the quiet goal behind these studies. Not to become demons, not to worship them, but to learn how to stand in their presence and still remain whole. This is where the true cost begins. In the process of learning how possession works, many were lost. Some were psychers pulled from their homes and told they were chosen. Others were criminals offered a way to serve the Emperor. Some were volunteers who believed in the cause. They entered the test chambers with hope. Most never walked back out. Possession is not clean. It does not follow rules. Even when the signs are clear, the results never are. Sometimes a person would scream for days before going quiet. Sometimes they would smile, say nothing, and then vanish from inside their own body. The researchers wrote down everything. They recorded every word, every change, every sound, not because they were cruel, but because they believed it mattered, that one day this pain would lead to understanding. There were successes, rare ones. A few test subjects were able to hold back the force inside them, not by resisting, but by facing it. These people were studied closely, their thoughts examined, their dreams recorded. Over time, a theory grew. That possession could be survived. Not only survived, but shaped into strength. This idea did not stay in the lab. It found its way into planning, into deeper rooms where the Inquisition spoke with the High Lords, into quiet meetings where new chapters were designed. One of those chapters would become the Exorcists, built not only to fight the warp, but to understand it from within. But the path to that moment was not clean. It was filled with failure, with rooms sealed forever, with entire ships lost when tests went too far. These moments were hidden, not out of shame, but out of fear. The Imperium cannot afford to let too many know how close it sometimes walks to ruin. That is the cost of knowledge. It is not always measured in coins or tools. Sometimes it is paid in silence, in names erased, in stories never told. And yet, without these dark steps, the Exorcists could not exist. They are not a mistake. They are a result. The proof that something was learned, that the price, while high, was not empty. In this chapter, we begin to see how far the Imperium will go when it believes the end is worth it. The next step in our journey will take us deeper into these trials. We will step into the rooms where the warp was tested, where people became more than what they were, or lost everything trying. We will learn about those who were possessed not to be broken, but to be watched, held, measured. We will meet the prisoners of the warp. There are many kinds of prisoners in the Imperium. Some are locked behind metal walls. Some are held in cells buried beneath stone. But there are others who are not chained by hands or bars. They are held by something deeper, something no eye can see. These are the prisoners of the warp. To understand them, we must step into places few speak about. Not battlefields or starships, but rooms without windows. Cold chambers filled with lights that flicker even when nothing moves. These are the testing sites used by the Ordo Malleus, places not marked on maps, not named in reports. Their purpose is quiet. Their purpose is control. Within these chambers, the Inquisition held subjects who had been touched by the warp. Some were psychers. Others had shown signs of strange visions or voices. Many had been taken from colonies where something unseen had begun to grow. They were not put to death, not right away. Instead, they were kept alive, to be studied, to be understood. Each room was made with seals and symbols, not just for safety, but to hold the shape of reality in place. The warp twists things. It turns inside into outside. It makes time stretch and fold. But with the right tools, with the right runes carved into the walls, it can be slowed, not stopped, only slowed. Inside, the subjects were watched by machines and by silent figures behind glass. Their thoughts were read through devices that glowed with red light. Their dreams were recorded. Their behavior was mapped. They were not tortured, but they were not free. Their lives were measured in moments of stability and collapse. Some of these prisoners were used to create demon hosts. This was a special kind of experiment. The idea was simple but dangerous. Bind a demon to a human body. Use it, control it, force it to answer questions or perform tasks. But the truth is never simple. Demon hosts are twisted things. They speak with voices that do not belong. Their skin changes. Their bones move. They are not people anymore. And the thing inside them is not sleeping. Still, the Inquisition continued. The goal was not to create monsters. It was to learn how the warp behaves, what makes a mind break, what lets a soul hold firm. Some hosts were stable for hours. Others lasted days. A rare few lasted weeks, but none were trusted for long. Once a demon takes hold, it begins to grow. It learns the shape of the cage, and sooner or later it finds a way out. There are records of one such creature. Its name, if it had one, is long forgotten, but its story lives in the memory of those who study these things. The demon host had been bound for 16 days. It spoke in broken words, described places that did not exist, gave warnings that came true. But then it began to change. Its eyes turned black. Its skin cracked open in patterns that glowed. The symbols in the room faded. The lights failed. By the time the guards entered, nothing was left but smoke. This was not a failure in the eyes of the Inquisition. It was a lesson. Every step forward comes with risk, and every risk offers something to learn. Not all prisoners were turned into demon hosts. Some were simply watched. These were called touch points. People who had come close to the warp, but not yet fallen. The Inquisition wanted to see if corruption could grow slowly, if it could be tracked, stopped, reversed. These touch points were kept in special quarters. They were given food, allowed to speak, but always watched. Even when they slept, someone was listening. Some showed signs of decay within days. They stopped using names. They drew symbols on the walls. Others seemed fine for months, even years. But then one day, without warning, they would scream words no one understood, or speak in a voice not their own. The Inquisition recorded all of it, not because they enjoyed the watching, but because every moment held clues. Why did one mind bend while another stood? What made some dreams turn dark? What thoughts opened the door to the warp? Among the many studied, a few began to show something rare: resistance. These subjects did not fall. They changed, but not in the way others did. They became more aware, more calm. They seemed to understand the presence inside them, not as a friend, not as a master, but as a challenge. These were the ones the Exorcists would one day be built around. It is believed that the early forms of exorcist training came from these prisoners. The lessons learned from watching them helped shape the trials we spoke of earlier. How to let the warp in without losing control. How to feel the weight of a demon and still keep the self. This idea was not shared with the wider Imperium. It could not be. If too many knew what was being done, fear would spread. People might see the Exorcists not as protectors, but as something else, something dangerous. So the work stayed hidden, the rooms stayed locked, and the prisoners remained where no one would find them. Some of those prisoners are still there. Not alive perhaps, but not fully gone either. Their names never written, their faces never shown, but their minds became maps, and those maps shaped a chapter. The story of these prisoners is not easy, it is not bright, but it matters, because through them, the Imperium learned how to face the warp, not with fire, but with understanding, not with hate, but with purpose. Now we move to a different kind of warrior, one that faces the warp with perfect faith, one that does not bend, that does not carry the stain of possession. In the next chapter we will meet the Grey Knights, and we will compare them to the Exorcists, not as rivals, but as two answers to the same question. How do you fight something that lives in the soul? The warp touches everything in the galaxy. Some fight it by building walls, others fight it by walking through it. The Grey Knights belong to the first path. They are the shield that does not bend. The Exorcists belong to the second. They are the hand that reaches into the storm and comes back holding light. Both paths are dangerous. Both have their place, but they are not the same. The Grey Knights are not like other Space Marines. They do not come from known gene lines. Their bloodline is kept in silence. Many believe it comes from the Emperor himself. They were created not just to fight demons, but to resist them completely. The Grey Knights are not made to understand corruption. They are made to be immune to it. Their minds are sealed. Their thoughts are clean. They do not feel the pull of the warp. They do not fear it. When a Grey Knight steps into battle, he does not question what he sees. He knows what must be done. There is no doubt, no hesitation. His body is wrapped in armor covered with sacred text. His blade is carved with words that bind. His soul is like a wall of silver, strong, unshaken. That is his strength. The Exorcists walk a harder road. They do not start with perfect minds. They are trained to know fear, to feel the warp, to let it in and still say no. Their power is not in purity, but in survival. They do not stand above corruption. They step into it and come back unchanged. They are not blank slates. They are marked and still standing. This difference creates tension, not anger, but a quiet distance. The Grey Knights look at the warp and see a thing to be burned, a stain to be erased. The Exorcists look at the same thing and see something that must be faced and endured. Both are right. Both are needed, but they will never see each other the same way. The Grey Knights do not fail, at least not in the way others do. Their purity protects them. No record speaks of a demon taking one of their number, and because of this, they fight with confidence. They do not fear falling. They do not carry the weight of that risk. This makes them sharp, clean, but it also makes them distant. The Exorcists do fail, not often, but sometimes. Their training is harsh but not perfect. There have been times when a brother fell too far, when the warp took root before he could stop it. These moments are buried. The Inquisition seals them away. But they are not forgotten. The chapter remembers. They carry that risk with every mission, and that memory shapes how they fight. There is a story often told in quiet corners. It speaks of a planet on the edge of the segmentum obscurus, a place where the sky turned violet and the animals stopped making sound. The people began to dream of fire. And then the fire came. The Grey Knights arrived first. They fought with clean strikes, quick action. They did their work with care. But the source of the corruption was not a demon. It was a whisper, a slow idea that passed from person to person. The Grey Knights could not see it, so they burned the city. The Exorcists came after. They walked through the ashes and found the last voices. They listened. They did not cleanse with fire. They spoke to the broken minds, found the thoughts that did not belong, and sealed them. They finished the work, not because they were better, but because they were built to look at the thing others turned away from. This is not to say one path is more pure, only that they are different. The Grey Knights stand at the edge and keep the dark from entering. The Exorcists enter the dark and find what lives inside. Both protect, both save. But they do so in ways shaped by their nature. There have been attempts to copy the work of the Exorcists, hidden projects in secret vaults. Some tried to make new warriors by mixing warp exposure with psychic training. Most ended in silence. One project led to an entire space station being locked down. Another caused a warp storm that still burns to this day. The process is not safe, not stable. It works for the Exorcists because their entire path was built around it. Others do not share that path. The Imperium accepts this. It does not praise it. It does not speak of it. But it accepts it. Because the warp cannot be ignored. It must be faced. And facing it requires more than strength. It requires understanding. That is the role the Exorcists play. The Grey Knights continue their work from Titan. Their fortress is full of light and order. Their history is written in silver books. The Exorcists work from shadows. Their home is a place of silence. Their past is spoken in soft tones, if at all. The two chapters rarely fight side by side. When they do not speak much. They do not need to. Each knows what the other is, and they respect the task each has been given. In the end, purity has its limits. It keeps a warrior clean, but it does not teach him what it feels like to fall. The Exorcists know that feeling. They carry it without shame, because they believe that strength comes not from staying clean, but from rising after being touched. As we move into the final chapter, we will look beyond these warriors. We will look into what lies past the warp, not as a place, but as a truth that touches every soul, every planet, every breath in this strange galaxy. And in that truth, we will see not fear, but a kind of peace. Because to understand the warp is not to love it. It is to know where it ends and where we begin. The warp is not just an enemy. It is not only something to fight or fear. It is part of the galaxy itself, a place without shape, a space where thought becomes form and feeling becomes power. It is both dangerous and strange. It is not evil in the way people often believe. It is simply what it is. And how the Imperium chooses to face it tells us what kind of truth it wants to live with. Most never see the warp. They pass through it on ships and never feel its touch, but it is always there, in the corners of thought, in the pressure behind dreams, in the sudden chill that comes with no wind. The warp presses in from beyond, always looking for ways to slip into the world of matter and time. When it finds those cracks, things begin to change. Sometimes it begins with voices, sometimes with lights that flicker for no reason, sometimes with a soft unease that grows with each passing day. This is why the Imperium watches so closely, not because it believes it can stop the warp, but because it knows the warp never sleeps. There is no final victory, only delay, only space to breathe before the next wave comes, and that understanding has shaped every choice the Imperium makes, every law, every silence, every secret. The Exorcists were made with this in mind. They are not heroes in the old sense. They are guardians of a truth few are allowed to speak, that some things must be touched to be understood, that true safety is not in hiding, but in knowing where the danger lives. They were created not just to destroy demons, but to learn from what the demons tried to do. Each time they faced possession and won, they brought back knowledge. Knowledge hidden behind their calm eyes and measured steps. That knowledge does not sit in books. It is not passed through speech. It lives in their movements, in the choices they make, in the places they pause, and the paths they take. The warp cannot be mapped in lines. It must be felt. It must be answered with quiet strength. This is why their silence matters. It is not empty. It is full. Every quiet moment holds meaning. It carries the weight of what they have seen, what they have endured, and what they protect others from, without ever asking for thanks. They stand so others can sleep. They burn so others can stay warm. Their path is not without risk. Possession is never clean. Even when resisted, it leaves shadows, marks in the soul that never fade. Some brothers carry these marks until the end. Others fade slowly, piece by piece. And yet they choose this, not for glory, not for recognition, but because they know someone must. They believe that survival is not enough, that understanding is also a kind of strength. The Exorcists are not alone in this work. The Ordo Malleus continues to seek out knowledge of the warp. The Grey Knights continue to strike with perfect form. Even rogue scholars and unsanctioned psychers in far places try to learn more. Each of these paths carries danger, and each helps shape how the Imperium views the veil between worlds. That veil is not a wall. It is not something that can be closed forever. It shifts and moves. In some places it grows thin. In others, it thickens. The Imperium calls these places weak points. But maybe they are not weak. Maybe they are just reminders that reality is not solid, that truth is not simple. The warp is not a mistake. It is part of the galaxy, and facing it means facing what lives inside ourselves. This is the message the Exorcists carry. Not that the warp must be feared, but that it must be known. Not that it should be welcomed, but that it must be endured. Their lives show what it means to walk through the worst and still remain whole. They are not clean. They are not untouched. But they are strong, not in spite of what they faced, because of it. The galaxy is full of battles. Armies clash across stars. Titans rise and fall. But beneath it all is this quiet war, the war of thought and soul, the war fought not with weapons but with will. And it is here in this quiet space that the Exorcists do their work. Their story reminds us that strength can take many forms, that sometimes the bravest thing is not to strike, but to stand, not to shout, but to listen, not to run, but to walk forward into the unknown. In the end, the warp will always be part of the Imperium. It will always wait beyond the veil. But as long as there are those who understand it, who carry its weight without falling, then there is hope. A quiet hope, a steady hope, the kind that burns softly in the dark and never goes out. As we bring this journey to a close, let your mind rest. You have walked with warriors shaped by shadow. You have seen the edge where truth and madness meet, and you have learned that even in the deepest night, there are lights that do not fade. Let them guide you gently into sleep.